closest thing to, I think, those big mechanical mechs that we'll ever see on film
so.
in Sucker Punch, yeah. The Big Brothers, I think
Oh,
is
I
what
took
they're
that
called.
off my list. I'm sorry, I'm still cheating.
Cheater.
If we can have
Don't
just
look at my list.
5 seconds of silence, so that way I have something to do the Nori introduction.
Moment of silence for all the movies we haven't mentioned.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, so that
I was really hoping Oliver would bark.
Right?
How dare you?
That would be amazing.
So anyway, do you want to start this time?
Yeah, I'm going to start this time.
We're already on 2012.
2012.
It feels just like yesterday. You guys can't get rid of us. We're just here for all this. See,
Quick note, the best thing I remember about 2012 is the 2012 Olympics, the best opening of any Olympics
was
I have
London?
ever seen in my entire life. Yes.
Yeah.
Fucking amazing. Great year. We didn't, the world didn't end, so that's awesome.
Well, we don't know that, Miguel.
Oh, yeah.
Fair enough.
No.
Ponder that one for a second there, folks.
My number 3 is Zero Dark 30. I had really, really
Liked
high.
it.
Yeah, I had really high hopes for this movie, and I was not disappointed. And you better not fuck this up. I mean, it's Jessica Chastain.
Don't worry, I won't.
Yeah. That's how I felt about the movie. I was like, you have Jessica Chastain in here. You have an amazing director. You have an amazing writer. It's about Bin Laden. Of course, in retrospective, a lot of it's probably bullshit.
Here's the I'm going to let you go into it because it's a really good movie. Here's the interesting thing about Zero Dark 30. In my opinion, and fact check me if I'm wrong, that is the quickest turnaround for a real life to cinema movie that I've ever seen, and it feels very like let's capitalize on how much people hated Bin Laden and they were happy to see him die.
Yeah.
And let's turn it into a movie as quickly as we possibly can. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and it doesn't take anything away from how good that movie is, but I think there was like an 8-month. Like, they went into movie shooting the day after the news broke because Obama was president.
Yeah, he still was at the time,
Still was in
too.
2012. But I can't recall the difference. It was like 6 to 8 months, I want to say. And that's pretty quick when it comes to real-world dramas being turned around into movies.
Yeah, we're used to that shit happening on made-for-TV movies, but the fact that it was so quick in a Hollywood film.
Yeah, it took them a while for 9/11 movies to come out, and then United 93 and World Trade Center hit in like the same year, but it took a while for that to happen. So very surprising timing on Zero Dark 30, but yeah, it was executed well. I can't. Was it Catherine Bigelow?
Catherine fucking Bigelow, man.
Catherine fucking Bigelow.
I've been obsessed with her since Near Dark. Well, we're also cracking up, folks, because my dog is trying to dig a hole in my own damn couch.
Nah.
He's just trying to get comfortable.
That's 20 minutes throwing
Catherine
around.
Bigelow's the shit.
Catherine Bigelow is amazing. Like I said, I was a little kid and I became a fan of her because of Near Dark, the vampire movie. Very underrated vampire movie.
Super underrated.
So yeah, I mean, she killed it with Zero Dark 30. Much more than I thought she did with the Bomb Maker movie with Jeremy. What's his name?
You mean George Clooney? Peacemaker?
Her Locker.
Oh.
No, with Jeremy Renner.
Jeremy Renner. And I love Jeremy Renner. I love Catherine Bigelow.
Only-
I wasn't a huge fan of the Hurt Locker, but
I
Zero
was not
Dark
either.
30.
Not
No.
her only bomb movie. I was confused because The Peacemaker, I believe she directed The Peacemaker as well. That's an old 90s movie with George Clooney about bombs, and he's like a specialist. And
That was a really cheesy movie.
Yeah.
It was aight.
Yeah, it was aight.
Peacemaker's one of those movies that I saw on VHS when I was a kid in the 90s. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
It was aight.
yeah, that wasn't crazy. But yeah, that's my number 3 is Zero Dark 30. And it's
Solid
actually
choice, man.
one of my favorite movies of the whole decade. So yeah.
Wow.
Hang on.
Hold on. I think she's thinking.
No
I am
stuff.
thinking. I don't know.
There's a lot.
You can't decide, I guess. It's hard to place a number 3, 2, and 1. It really is.
Yeah.
For this year, it was.
I think I gotta go with the man with the iron fists.
At number 3?
Yeah.
Which one's that again?
That's
Heather,
the one
remind
with
me of what the hell
It's
that
RZA is this like samurai guy. I think his arms get like severed and he has iron fists. And it's got Russell Crowe as the bad guy and Lucy Liu and Batista. Is he in it? Or was he in the second one?
He's in the second one.
I believe.
We
It wasn't very
probably
good.
won't be
No,
talking
the
about
second
at
one was
all.
awful, but the first one I love. Of course, it's got a kick-ass soundtrack because it's RZA.
He was in the first one.
Oh,
Was he?
Yeah.
That's right. He's like this big like not steel guy, but he's like his skin is really
I think
hard
he just
or
got
something,
the
and he can't.
exclusive to run with the franchise because he is in the second one for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. But I don't know. I enjoyed it. It's a kind of a silly movie, but I thought everybody in it was pretty good.
Nice. I have the digital code unused. If you
Nice.
if you need that.
What was your number 3, Seth?
My number 3, and I've got 2 written down here. I'm gonna since I know one other person at this table who's probably gonna mention this one. I'll mention the other one. It's oh dang.
I think I'm pretty sure I'm the one you're mentioning,
yes.
but it's not top 3.
Okay, that's fine. Then it could be both of our honorable mentions, because now that I think about it, I actually liked the movie I'm going to talk about a little more. Dredd is my number 3.
Good
And
choice.
This is because I have a long history with Judge Dredd, and I love Judge Dredd.
More Sly Stallone crap. from the
No, it's
past.
not based on that. Based on the comics themselves and how undervalued I think Judge Dredd is, and the entire scope of comics, and how great of a character he is, how great of a world he inhibits is, and I just feel like there's so much potential with that character, and it's never been realized on film, because as fun as the 96 Stallone Armand Assante Judge Dredd is, it's fun.
Mhm.
It's
It
very
is.
fun. It's
Yeah.
not Judge Dredd. It's not very rooted in the comics and the grittiness of it. Exactly, Miguel took the words out of my mouth. Now, 20 years later, or roughly 20 years later, Dredd comes out, and it was unexpected for me. I remember hearing about the trailers and the rumor mill of this movie, and I'm like, there's no way that they're going to do this right, because it hasn't been done right. And it was done as good as you could expect a decent sized budget Dredd movie, because Carl Urban, first of all, I wasn't sold on him being Dredd based on the stills and the screenshots of him in costume. But then after seeing this movie, holy shit, he really dug into that role, and he got the emotionless. First of all, he keeps the helmet on for the entirety of the movie, so it's not the Judge Dredd human side of things. He's the authoritarian throughout the entire movie that Judge Dredd's supposed to be. He's the emotionless, cold guy who will resort to any means to take control of the situation and bring the criminals to justice, which is just the epitome of what Judge Dredd's supposed to be. Now, into the actual movie itself, because that's saying a lot of good stuff about Carl Urban's
Lena
strength.
Headey was the
Lena Headey
protagonist,
is the
I
villain,
guess. Yeah.
and she is such a bitch in this movie. And I'd never seen her
Mhm.
in a role that I've never seen a female villain as like gritty and gross as hers in this
Yeah.
movie. She's like a crackhead. Basically, this is delving into more of the details of the plot, but there's this drug that people use that slows time down, and it's become like this rampant thing in the city that Dredd watches over and patrols over. And this movie is just a random call that Judge Dredd gets to go into these Peachtree broken down apartment buildings that's at the heart of the city. And then the villain realizes that a judge is in her domain, and she puts a quarantine on the entire apartment complex. So you see the slow-mo of the apartment complex going into like shutter mode, and the quarantine vibes get kicked in. And then the entire movie, the bulk of it, takes place within the confines of this shut off from the outside world apartment complex. And the action is from floor to floor, very reminiscent of stuff like The Raid and Old Boy, in that scene where he goes from one end of the hallway to the other. This is like a hallway-to-hallway urban action movie. No pun intended. Urban action movie.
It is, in fact, yes.
But there's also this visceralness. The violence is very Dredd-like. There's skinning in this movie. There's up-close head explosions from bullets. There's a lot of grittiness that I feel they got away with because it was a rated R comic book movie that if superimposed on like another action movie, it's too much. But since it's a comic movie, they get away with it, and it's blood, guts. The action sequences are balls to the wall from start to finish. I love everything about Dredd. And there's this really nice collector's edition Blu-ray with a slip cover that just takes it through the roof. Canadian exclusive too.
Isn't there a scene where it's like a 50 cal or something, and they're shooting it across the
hallway?
hallway.
Across the hallway to another platform.
It's just crazy. It's mass chaos,
awesome
but
stuff.
it's amazing.
Another side note, in brief, at that point in my movie watching, and this is post-Matrix, post a lot of the like 2000s or action movies, I thought that I had seen all the coolest ways that slow-mo could be incorporated in the movies, and yet Dredd incorporates some slow-mo scenes that make it even cooler.
And some of them are almost pretty, even the way they do it.
Some of them are very, very nice to watch and very pleasant and aesthetically pleasing, as are the sequences of the guys taking the drugs, and that's actually what the slow-mo kind of is, parts of the scenes.
Right.
So the drugs that they take play a big role in this. Lena Headey's awesome. Carl Urban's awesome. And it's balls to the walls fun. It's like the trope of what a popcorn flick should be.
Cool.
Gotcha.
Dread.
My number 3, almost a guilty pleasure a little bit, but I'm going with Contraband, another Mark Wahlberg film.
Movie.
It is a good movie. He was a smuggler. He gets out of the smuggling game. He's a security guy in New Orleans. His brother-in-law, though, is still trying to smuggle. Makes a mistake smuggling some stuff for a drug dealer who's Giovanni Ribisi. And so, long story short, Mark Wahlberg's got to come back to smuggling to get his brother-in-law out of trouble. They go from New Orleans to Panama, and he's there to smuggle counterfeit money. There's all kinds of stuff that happens when he's there. He ends up they're going to hit this armored car.
Of unfortunate events on a cargo ship. That's a really good
The way
movie.
they, take the false wall off in the ship to hide everything was pretty cool. The way they had the container to get things onto the ship was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they ended up with a Jackson Pollock painting in the end that the Panamanian drug lord or whatever was trying to steal from for himself. Just a good heisty action movie.
Yeah,
kind of smart.
What sets that movie apart for me is the setting, being on a ship, and there's maybe 30 minutes of runtime that's off the ship. I think Eva Longoria's his wife in it.
No, it's Kate Beckinsale, I think, right?
Oh yeah, okay. Visually, I get those two confused very often. Because they're very attractive brunettes, and so Contraband takes place on a cargo ship, but it's a heist movie, and the heist is contained in a setting where you wouldn't think heists could even be shot. It's like it's a beat down old cargo ship, and there's this crew of guys that are just there. It's really good and underappreciated. I'm glad that's on your list, Morgan.
Yeah, I like
I
that
didn't
movie.
even write it down because I forgot it came out in that year, but
Yeah, like January of that year.
Yeah.
My number 3 pick is Moonrise Kingdom
So fun.
from
Love
Wes
it.
Anderson. I think this might be my favorite Wes Anderson movie. I just really
Sacrilege.
I know. Well, I don't know. I really.
It's a good one. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know.
Life
Your
Aquatic
favorite?
kind of.
Yeah,
I go
I'm on
back.
that one.
I go
Yeah.
back. Well, which one did y'all say?
The Life Aquatic.
I don't think anything touches Life Aquatic for myself.
Mm-mm.
I just really like the story. The kids are the 2 kids that run away to be together. It's so sweet.
It's just kind of a pure, innocent
It really
movie.
it
Yeah.
is. And I mean, and then Edward Norton and Bruce Willis being in it. Frances McDormand, again, Tilda Swinton is in it. Swinton, whatever. I can never pronounce her damn name. Is in it too, and it's just so endearing, and it's just so, like, it's so innocent. Like, that's just like the best word. You can think. I mean, even though the kid is like, he'll stab you in a minute,
Right,
you know?
right.
if you try to fuck with him and his girl. They have a bunch of misadventures in the movie, and I really like it. Every time it comes on, I watch it. So number 3 for me.
Nice. I like it. It's another one that I didn't quite catch when it came out, but it was, maybe a few years later, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. I love it. And then I made Jeff sit and watch it too. So
Yeah, I love the awkwardness of those movies.
Yeah.
that he
It's like
has.
the third or
Definitely.
fourth best Scout movie.
Scout movie.
What's the
yeah,
first?
Troop Beverly Hills being
Bushwhacked.
#1.
Oh.
Bushwhacked, starring Daniel Stern from the
That's solid.
mid-90s.
That's solid. I got you. There.
Really strong Scout movie. And then there's Scouts versus Zombies, or Guide Boy Scouts that came.
I love that.
Oh, that
Oh,
movie's so
it's like
good.
the Scout's Guide to the Apocalypse.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh man, that movie. As far as zombie movies are concerned, that one is underrated as fuck, and
I've
that
not
comes
seen
later
that.
on in the decade as a guilty pleasure.
Fair enough.
In 2015, I have an underrated zombie movie. So
And then there's The Last Boy Scout,
just like,
if we're counting Scout movie. I mean,
No, it does.
no, okay. Why is it even called The Last Boy Scout?
Well, I think because Bruce Willis's character in there is known as a he was a Boy Scout,
Mm.
right?
I
Because
gotcha.
he was a Secret Service before he got knocked out of the.
He's the
Secret
last
Service,
man
yeah.
standing.
Mm, all right.
Oh no, number
Number 2.
Oh yeah, we're
Two.
good.
Number 2.
Dang,
I like
cruising.
that. Yeah, being consistent here. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Skyfall. Skyfall is, and other people think, oh, he picked another big blockbuster movie. Let me
okay.
tell you something. This is the Bond movie I was waiting for, because
Sure.
I remember I was even talking this about one of my professors back at Howard College before this movie didn't come out. He had said, you know what? Who knows what's going to happen to the franchise, because Casino Royale was good.
Yeah.
The other one was not, which was what was the second one? The Quantum of Solace was not. He said he's got one more shot if he's really going to be the
Yeah,
next
right.
Bond, and he fucking killed it. It wasn't him though. It was the
No.
director. It was Javier Bardem.
Yeah.
It was the story. It was Adele. Probably, I think,
Yeah,
arguably
the maybe the best Bond song of all.
it is the best Bond song of all time. I feel very, very comfortable saying that. It was.
I like GoldenEye.
We all.
I like how Heather's
Tina
silently
Turner.
disagreeing.
Tina Turner, GoldenEye. I don't know,
was
pops
good.
it off for me. It was good.
So
The World is
90s.
Not Enough
Boom,
is my
boom,
favorite.
Who
Okay.
did the World is Not
Garbage.
Enough? Garbage. Ah,
That's
that
a good
was
one,
a
too.
good one too. Though, fuck, that was so good.
Nobody
See,
remembers who did Quantum of Solace. I don't even
Nobody
know that
cares.
there's a song.
I think
I don't think there's a song.
I think it was what's his name from.
no, there's definitely a song, but it's a shitty one. It's not Sam Smith, is it?
No,
It's what's
that
his name who
was,
died,
Spectra.
who I
Oh,
love, by the way.
What's his name? Who died?
Ah, God damn it, I'm having a horrible brain fart. But point being, though, is that there were so many great things about that
I
movie.
like Skyfall a lot.
It deserved to
Yeah.
be the most successful Bond film since the first Bond, which is what
Sure.
they said.
And I'm glad you say that too. That key statement. It deserved to be. So the thing about the James Bond series is they should only get better with time, right? As the budgets increase and as the filmability of big action sequences increases. James, you said this is the Bond movie I always wanted to see.
Well, since I was a little kid, and I was taken back by the first two.
Yes. Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace did not they did not take everything that was available for filmmakers in the 2010s and turned it
No.
into a great James Bond movie. Not even as good as things like movies like GoldenEye did. GoldenEye is famous for the opening scene where Pierce Brosnan drives his motorcycle off a runway.
Which
That's
is right.
Yeah, the extremism of James Bond was not done justice in Casino Royale. Even though Casino Royale is a great movie,
I think that was the point. I think that there was a
Yeah.
rebellion. I think that the last Bond movie they made with Halle Berry, when the
Die
Ice
Another
House,
Day. Yeah.
it
The
was
very Fast and Furious-y.
It
sort of
was.
sequencing.
It was so Fast and Furious. I think it lost its brains. People
Yeah.
were making fun of that movie like left and right because it was
Casino
so
Royale was a hard reset.
cheesy. It was. They
Mhm.
wanted to reset the franchise into something really dark and
Great
gritty and
movie.
realistic as a rebellion
Yes.
to what the Halle Berry movie did.
Great movie, and it should have been a standalone like one of, but then Quantum
Yeah.
Solace tried to build on that momentum from Casino
It
Royale,
didn't work.
and it faltered. And then Skyfall is even a harder reset on the series, bringing
Right.
back the intensity of the Bond villains and what made the series great in the
Originally
60s, 70s,
great.
80s, and you integrate that into the big action sequences that made the Brosnan stuff pretty good, in my opinion. Even though Tomorrow Never Dies, World Is Not Enough was good, and GoldenEye,
Goldeneye was a
top 3 Bond movies in my opinion.
monster hit. Yeah.
Monster movie, and Skyfall is right there in the well executed. It's maybe the best Bond movie as far as execution's concerned.
Absolutely.
Quantum of Solace was Another Way to Die with Jack White and Alicia Keys.
Oh, so that's the most random fucking
That
pairing.
Just seeing
Yeah.
that pairing shows you how big of a mess the
How of
movie's
a
going to be.
misstep that is, yeah.
How commercial it was.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
And just because it's so weird, you would think that we would remember, right?
Yeah.
Like we.
What's the tagline for the new one? A good time to
Oh,
die or a time
yeah.
to die? No time
No
to die.
time to die.
No
Yes.
time to die.
I did not like
That's
that title.
James Bond, No Time to Die, which makes it feel like a Die Hard movie.
Yeah, it's. I remember I was like, "Are they? Is this The Onion?" When I first heard the
Yeah,
title
right.
of it, I was just like, "This is really, really."
You were
cheesy.
thinking of Casino Royale. That
Well,
was
let's
Chris
do
Cornell.
Chris Cornell.
Ah,
They
yeah,
did
Chris
Casino
Cornell.
Royale.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Let's do just real quick before we jump back on track. Let's do guesses as to who's going to do the "No Time to Die" theme song. Who's primed for it? Who's ready? Taylor Swift?
Oh Jesus!
God, I hope not. All right.
Little Nas.
Who?
Lil
Nas?
Nas?
Lil Nas X.
Oh
huh?
yeah.
Yeah.
Lizzo.
Old Town Road it
Yeah,
up.
Lizzo. Yes.
If I were to take a serious stab at it, I'd probably go with Billie Eilish. Is her name?
Ugh, I hope not.
Yeah.
If she keeps
Maybe.
going traction wise, it's hard to shun the biggest I guess the biggest pop star of the current time, and that's kind of where they've trended in the past with Sam Smith, Alicia Keys.
I think or Gaga.
You don't think she's too past her prime?
Oh no, not at all. Like I think that
Okay.
well, she just got off of her tour.
A Star Is
and then
Born.
A Star Is
All right.
Born is
But musically,
huge.
she's been sort
She's-
of
she's
backseat.
She's now an actress.
Uh-huh. She's transitioned.
but she's working on her new album right now.
Could be.
So it might coincide just perfectly. Yeah, Gaga
Yeah.
would be interesting because musically she hasn't done a ton of that score-like sound. And
Pink
yeah.
would be amazing. I love her voice.
She would be good.
She would kill it, I
Why's it
think.
got to be a chick though? It could be a guy.
Could be,
If
but
they, who are you gonna say?
I was gonna say my girl Lana Del Rey.
Ooh.
Yeah,
that's a
she's good
choice.
too.
The Weeknd and Lana Del Rey have a very
Oh,
good chemistry,
yeah.
Yes.
and they have a track record as well. If those two did it, yeah, I'm on board. Yeah,
Maybe
there we
so,
go.
yeah.
The Weeknd, Lana Del Rey,
Yeah.
make it happen. What's the studio? Sony. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Please listen to what Sony has to
Having
do.
Yeah, right.
bucks.
Heard it here.
Bastards
Yeah,
of Sony.
you heard it here.
Yeah. Taking Spider-Man away from us. MCU Spider-Man.
That's
Ugh.
a whole
Okay.
other podcast.
Yeah.
fight.
Right?
Yeah. All right.
Money.
Number
bastards.
number two pick, Heather.
I'm gonna go with Seven Psychopaths.
Hey, good
Like
choice.
that. Yeah.
My wife's gonna love you
Yeah.
for it.
It's a what is his name? Jim Jarmusch, I think. Isn't he the one that did that?
Jarmusch? I don't. It might be.
I'm,
That's the
I'm
Ghost
probably
Dog guy.
screwing this up.
Forrest
He's also the
Whitaker.
one that did the Dead Don't Die here recently.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I don't know. That's Jim Jarmusch. It might be.
I may be wrong.
Oh, The Dead Don't Die, which we still have not seen yet.
Directed by Martin McDonough.
Oh, that's right. He did 3 Billboards.
Ah yes.
Yeah, I knew it was someone.
Overrated.
Hey, I
3
like
Billboards is
Yes,
overrated.
it is.
But
Overrated.
We'll
Hey,
get, we'll get
we
to
are
that in
not there yet.
2017.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But Seven Psychopaths, it's just, I don't know. It's a lot like
It's a lot
Smoking
like-
Aces,
It's a
kind
lot
of.
like the Guy Ritchie melting pot of actors,
Yeah.
and the whole vibe that Snatch and Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking
Mhm.
Barrels had, but the American version of it,
Right.
which is Smoking Aces.
Yeah.
Yep,
Plus, you got Christopher Walken. Like,
Yeah.
you know. What's not to love?
for sure. It's a good movie. Solid
Yeah.
choice. Number 2, and this one's tough to talk about because it scares the fuck out of me.
Uh-oh.
This is Sinister.
Mm.
Number 2. This is on my short list of scariest movies I've ever seen. There is so much. There are movies that I've seen that in the horror genre that I have no problem revisiting over and over again. And yet there are movies within this movie that I have trouble getting past because that's what the whole plot of the movie revolves around. Ethan Hawke is a famed writer who moves into a home and he finds a stash of old 8mm movies in an attic, and from the jump, these movies are horrifying. And from the opening scene of Sinister, you know what you're in for, because the opening scene of Sinister is horrifying, grisly stuff. Some of the worst stuff you could see on a big screen, and it only gets worse. And there are those. This is at a time where there were the internet movies, and YouTube was gaining a lot of steam, and you would watch. There were those videos where you'd watch YouTube and then have you staring at a static image, and then all of a sudden something would come out and get you. So there's a little bit of that in this movie, except it's more like the once you see it, you can't unsee it vibe. And these movies that Ethan Hawke watches in his family home, mind you, are of other families doing terrible things to each other because of a supernatural force that has taken over their family. And the supernatural force does not play nice. He's a figure of mystical lore that actually has some deeply rooted, like, actual connotations to it. The name, not so much. I think his name is Bagul. I might actually have some resonance. But there's a supporting character in this who's played by Vincent D'Onofrio very well, who's like a historian on this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And Ethan Hawke visits him, and then D'Onofrio gives like a rundown of the history of this guy, which only intensifies the movie experience that you're watching, because now you have it in your mind that there's some semblance of historical lore to this terrible entity that's terrorizing Ethan Hawke and his family. So Sinister is not a fun movie to watch if you consider the images in this movie. And there are moments as well that it's got its jump scares like any other horror movie, but there are movies of pure fright that I don't say that very often about stuff, but it's just this weird vibe that I've never gotten over. And if a movie makes me feel that way, then there's something unique about it. And it did what I thought no horror movie could do, and it made me feel very uncomfortable watching it. And that's what I seek out in horror now, because Sinister set the bar so high. And granted, I'd seen uncomfortable movies well before, you know, the I Spit on Your Graves, the Martyrs of the world, and stuff like that, that the subject material sort of lended a hand in how uneasy it was going to make you feel. But Sinister wasn't supposed to do that. A guy finds old tapes, and terrible things happen on these tapes, and he watches them. So it's very 8mm-esque with Nicolas Cage, except instead of snuff film, which it's a very snuff film vibe that you get, but it's snuff films with families dying on the tape, and it is rough to watch. Yes.
Yeah.
And
I was trying to convince
Sinister.
Jeff to watch it Sunday night, I think, and I'm kind of glad I didn't.
Oh man,
Like,
you
so-
gotta
I'm scared
dive
just
deep
hearing
into
about it.
Dive
So-
deep into it, Heather. It's awesome.
I'm such a
and it's worth
chicken
the
shit,
watch.
though. I
Yes,
hate these
okay,
kind of
so-
movies.
So I've seen. I'm not a big scary movie person,
Yeah.
but I've seen this movie. It scared the shit out of me.
Ugh.
Our friend
But-
left. I think that's what he does.
Yeah, like we were.
Oh, yeah.
We were it was Miguel, me, and our friend CJ. And CJ doesn't do scary movies either. She was out.
She was done.
Is this
Um,
directed by Scott Derrickson by chance?
Yes.
Okay, so that gives me a lot of hope for the movie that he has been tagged to coming out soon. Scott Derrickson is not the kind of guy you would think going into 2012 would direct this kind of movie, because he was coming off of the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still with, and he was coming off of Keanu Reeves, a bad comic movie as well. I want to say Ghost Rider, but maybe that's not right.
Scanner Darkly?
No, that was Richard Linklater. But Scott Derrickson's track record coming into this movie was not. I look into who's directing the movie to see what kind of vibe I'm going to get from it, and I was put off by him directing this movie because the script and the plot sounded really good, and I was like, why do they got this cheeseball directing it?
He
But
directed
as
Doctor Strange.
Yeah, as soon and that's right. He's directing Doctor
new
Strange
Doctor
into the
Strange.
multiverse.
No, he
or-
directed the other one.
Oh, he's directing the new one too. So that's why I'm very optimistic about that movie, because that's supposed to take a horror sci-fi turn as well. And this is from the director of Sinister, who's going to be directing a very horror-driven comic movie that we all like the original to. So I'm really amped up about that. But yeah, he did a marvelous job with Sinister, and it's not just the bulk of the horror that's in this movie. The ending is really strong. The sequel's terrible,
Well, of course.
but
I don't remember the sequel.
But I don't think we watched it.
nobody remembers.
I'm
But-
terrified just listening about this movie.
It is absolutely terrifying. But it is really good. But I was scared shitless the whole time. Because I just don't do good with the horror movies.
Me neither. No.
Anybody who's ever seen it will probably also say that there's a top 5 horror scene of all time in it. So if that's not enough,
Talk about the car scene.
no. That's horrifying, but there is a scene infamously referred to as the lawnmower scene that
of course.
is
Yeah. It
literally getting chills thinking about it, because it's really gross, to be honest. It's
Yeah.
repulsive.
well, it's like whenever I first went into it, I was like, okay, this is going to be another shit horror movie. I was not prepared for how scary it was, and so that really caught me off guard too. And I don't know if I can ever watch it again. But
Yeah, I mean that's my favorite genre. I remember, again, most horror movies I walk out of pissed because I didn't get what I wanted. I didn't get bothered. I didn't get scared. That movie I did, man. I
Mhm.
remember watching it, feeling just almost cringing.
Yes.
It was like, I don't just feel creeped out right now. I feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
This is what I fucking want out of a horror movie, so thank you.
Yeah.
Like,
It is
all
free
the
with
reasons.
ads on Vudu right now. That's why we
Free
were going to
with
watch
ads on Vudu.
Sure, it's-
it. Yes.
You can't watch that movie with ads. So don't watch it with ads.
Don't.
Yeah,
It's
just
gonna
borrow it
ruin
from
the
me.
mood.
It'll ruin everything. There'll be pauses in the intensity. This is a movie that once it gets rolling,
Yeah.
the vibe sustains, and the intensity ramps up and up and up, because the videos get worse and worse and worse.
Can you think of another movie that scared you more than Sinister?
That's what
That scared you more than Sinister?
scared me more than
Or
Sinister?
at least creeped you out?
Yes, it's a foreign movie called Shudder, Korean film that
Check
it
that
revolves. You should definitely check it out because of your love for photography. It revolves around that. So basically, it's this camera that captures supernatural entities, and it's
fucking
not
awesome.
just one camera. It's really just this guy in general that attracts supernatural entities, but he happens to be a photographer, so his cameras pick them up.
That's based on a real story that happened here in the U.S. with an old lady who said that she could pick up paranormal
Oh,
stuff.
that's
with a
crazy as
psychic.
fuck.
No, it was on that show Sightings I used to watch when I was a kid in the 90s.
Yeah.
That's
If
fucking crazy.
you ask me that question, and the two offhand that come to mind are Sinister and Shudder. Yeah.
Okay, I gotta
But there's
check out
probably
Shudder
a ton
now.
of other stuff.
I'm very curious, Heather, if you finish watching
Oh,
it.
please! When we
Right.
get
We'll
back here
see.
for 2013, you need to let us know what your viewer experience of Sinister was.
Well, if my eyes are all bloodshot because I haven't slept, you'll know.
yeah,
Call into
definitely do
work.
that.
Yes.
Going back to what your choice earlier, so I'm just to backtrack a little bit. I was looking up on my phone, 7 Psychopaths. Why haven't I heard of it? What the fuck is wrong with me? Why
Colin
haven't I heard of this
Farrell,
movie?
Christopher
Why-
It's
I,
so
I, I
good.
was looking at it going,
Yeah.
what? All these fucking people are in this movie, and I don't remember it existing. And like my favorite Christopher Walken, whoa, he's in there too. Like I have to. That's actually put a star next to it because I didn't know this movie fucking existed. If I did, I must have forgot. I just can't believe it. So yeah, that's I'm gonna be checking that out. Where are we at? 2.
Morgan.
Morgan's number 2.
Number 2, let's talk Django.
Yeah, let's.
Oh man.
Hopefully, I'm not
Inevitability.
taking somebody's number 1. It's probably the only choice I'm gonna have. That's a big blockbuster movie.
I don't know. Larry Crown had like 30 million.
I considered Django, but I still don't know if it would be on my list or not. At the time, I didn't care for it a whole lot, but I've since watched it several times, and I actually really like it now. So,
It's a lot of
but
uncomfortable.
cringy
Yeah.
on purpose, like
Yeah.
it's supposed to be.
It's Quentin Tarantino's start to I guess Inglourious Bastards was the alternative history timeline and putting it on cinema and saying this is how it could have gone if this and this and this and this had happened. Yeah, so It's a good movie. I got nothing wrong to say about it, and no negative comments. I just I feel it is a safe choice. It's a safe choice. But
I don't know if it's
Some
is it
people
really
hate
safe?
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
They didn't appreciate it. I think.
Yeah.
Some people fucking hated that movie. Ask Spike Lee what he thinks about that
fair
movie.
enough.
Right?
Yeah.
I thought Leo was amazing in it.
yeah. Christoph Waltz just steals that movie. I think.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
steals every movie though. He's
Yeah.
so fantastic. I
Okay,
love him.
Who's the best part of that movie?
Yeah. He's
think so?
definitely. Oh yeah, he's
Mhm.
definitely the guy that carries it. I think.
See, I go with Leo, but that's because I love Leo. He brings so much to the movie.
All right. Yeah, I agree. Everything Leo
Samuel
does
L. was
Yeah.
His character was so out of character for the characters he
Yeah.
plays. It was
Mhm.
great.
he
It's
was
the opposite of Black Snake Moan, Samuel L. Jackson, which he was lights out in.
Well, and Jamie Foxx for being the lead, I think was kind of the weaker
he
side
held
of
his own.
things. I mean, he was
He held his own.
okay.
He held
but
his own. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd agree.
But I feel like
he was definitely out.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was out chopped actor wise, like Sam Jackson.
even what was it, Kerry
Christoph
Washington?
Waltz.
I think was his
Yeah, Carrie
wife.
Washington was the wife.
Yeah,
Jamie Foxx was outclassed left and right, but he held.
but
his
he was
own.
good. Yeah, like
Yeah,
he
he was
wasn't
good.
bad. He just was the weak link when it comes to all those other amazing
And
performances.
there's always going to be that guy in all of Tarantino's stuff that's like the weakest link, but holds.
but it's
his
still
own.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. It's out of the way.
My number 2, which I'm surprised Miguel hasn't mentioned this yet, was Prometheus.
Dang.
I didn't grow up watching Aliens. I think I watched.
I think you watched it.
I think I watched Alien. I watched pieces of it whenever it would come on like TBS or like TNT or something like that. But Miguel like made me sit down and watch all of them, which I really enjoyed. Not complaining. So whenever we did it before Prometheus came out, and I guess it really helped me watching all of them again because I like picked up on little Easter eggs and nuances and like but Prometheus is pretty good. I'm not crazy about Covenant, but I thought Prometheus was pretty solid. So Nomi Reprise, you got Charlize Theron, you got Idris Elba.
Logan Marshall Green.
Yeah, your
That's
favorite.
my underrated guy of the decade because he's been an upgrade.
Oh, so
the
good.
Invitation. He was in Devil at the start of the decade. That guy. Very Tom Hardy light is basically how I remember him.
Yeah.
He's that guy in all these movies. That guy's an amazing actor. What was his name?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's my number 2.
That's a solid choice.
Very good.
All right, so numero uno, Miguel.
I'm going to go ahead and preface this and prepare by telling all of you to just piss off right now.
Okay.
It's Les Mis.
Oh, it's so good though.
Okay, thank you, thank
Oh.
God.
It is a great
Thank God.
movie. I love it.
And Django was safe.
Wait a second. Les Mis was the Academy Award winner, I believe, of that
Yeah,
year.
I
We'll
know.
check that.
I remember I became a bitchy diva when Hugh Jackman didn't win.
Okay.
It was just fucking amazing. I didn't think I was gonna like it. I'm not big. I don't like musicals. I'm not a big fan of musicals. Aside from South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut,
Right.
I'm not a fan.
How about
of
Team America?
Team
Is that a
America.
You know,
musical?
Grease ain't too bad.
So Les Mis was nominated, but it did not
It didn't win. Okay.
Argo won that
Oh,
year.
yeah.
That's right.
Gotcha. I was
That's
going to
good
say
flick.
that would be your second
Yeah.
in the first 3 years, Best Picture and number one
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
had King's Speech. So, yeah.
Fuck you, you mainstream.
We know who the
Miguel.
company man is
You
here.
got,
Mhm.
Zero Dark 30 as your choice, and then
Like
Yeah.
that's
Holy
so
shit.
mainstream.
Yeah.
No, it's not even that. It's just so
Mainstream
Academy.
gal.
It's,
And it's funny. Sometimes I fucking hate the Academy. Like,
but
I'm
you probably
the
are the
fish out of
most.
water.
You're probably the most technical out of this group when it comes to cinema. So I see why you're picking these because they are great overall movies from top to bottom, and you can watch the credits on these movies, and
Yeah.
you're interested in who did what.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was so taken aback by the cinematography of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the writing was so solid. Again, I'm not big on musicals. I wanted to see it because I love Hugh Jackman. I love Anne Hathaway. I'm not a big fan of Russell Crowe. but I wanted to see it,
shit.
and then I was so fucking won over by this almost 3-hour movie. It was just so good. It was such an epic piece of art, and I mean, I more than got my money's worth from it. And I remember walking out and being like, God, I fucking love Hugh Jackman. Like, we knew he was a pretty good actor before, but watching him in here, I was like, oh God, I hope he wins. God, I hope he wins. He didn't win the Oscar. I thought he should have, but it's just an incredible piece of
Who won
cinema.
Best Actor that year? Affleck for Argo.
I think Affleck did.
I remember being mad
Affleck.
because Hugh didn't win, but he was nominated.
Yeah. My
But-
only complaint on the movie was the love story between Amanda Seyfried, I don't know how to pronounce it, and Eddie Redmayne. I thought was really weak. Or I don't know if it was just their chemistry or what it was.
their chemistry.
I didn't care for that.
Because if you've ever watched I remember watching the plays after this and the different versions of this. The
Yeah.
chemistry was there. It lacked with them too. I think that I didn't really believe that Eddie Redmayne's character was so
Right.
hang over heels
Like,
over her.
right. I like some of his songs, like Empty Chairs at Empty Tables.
Yeah.
Such a great song. But just their whole little thing, which I know is a pivotal point of the story because she's got to have something other than this relationship with her father. But
Right.
I don't know. That part I didn't really care for, but the rest of it I thought was great.
Their chemistry was probably the weakest link in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, but that's
A lot of people kind of shit on Russell Crowe with his performance, but
Daniel-
I liked
Daniel
it.
Day.
It was the surefire shoe.
Oh, for Lincoln.
Because
Yes.
anytime he's in a movie, he
Lincoln.
wins Best Actor.
That was a
Daniel
good
Day
movie.
It was.
It really was. It's not on my it's on my like sorta list,
What?
but
What movie?
Lincoln.
Lincoln. Not
That
even
was-
the best.
that-
Daniel
not
Day-Lewis
even the
won
best
that
Abe
ever.
Lincoln
movie that
of the
year. No way,
decade.
Jose.
No, is that going to be your number one pick?
Abe Lincoln, Vampire Hunter.
Yes.
was keeping track.
The book
Greatness.
was better.
Directed by Timur Bekmambetov from Wanted
Sure.
fame.
Wanted.
And
Yeah. I
Night Watch, Day Watch. Yeah.
absolutely loved the book Vampire Hunter. I wasn't crazy about the movie. It was fun.
Yeah. It was fun.
Fun movie. Yeah.
But
yeah, I'm with you on Les Mis. I thought it was great.
good. Thank God. But
Well,
yeah,
At least someone else is.
Yeah. Musical out.
No.
Okay.
Fair enough, though.
What's your number one?
So you want to talk about safe choices? The Avengers.
Holy cow. Oh, boy.
But let me okay, so we had Iron Man, we had Captain America, we had Thor, we had lots of different Hulk movies, and this was the first time they're really all coming together, and it was just this kind of epic story, and I thought it came off really, really well, and I loved it then, and I love it now.
Yeah.
So it's not my favorite Marvel movie by any stretch, even, but I loved it. It was a good time. It was a
It was a good time.
It's on my list. It's just not my top three.
It's not on my list, and it's not in my top three.
That's fair. My
But-
list is very light on comic book movies because I'm trying to, I tried to stay away from sequels and remakes and stuff like that.
Yes.
But
I
it was
agree.
such an event. I don't know.
I agree that it was a big event, and it was a glimpse of what Marvel could bring to the table.
Yeah.
It was just, it wasn't. It was in their learning curve of like, how are we going to make this work? It was the first. It was the first time you saw that many comic heroes on screen at the same
Mhm.
time. The origin stories didn't all work. This one was better than all of them for
Right.
sure, but the traction wasn't there, and the Avengers might arguably have started the traction because it was at the time the biggest box office grossing movie of all time.
Yeah.
Actually, no, that was Avatar.
Yeah.
It didn't dethrone Avatar. It came close, I want to say, but that record stood all the way until recently in Endgame. So yeah, it was a glimpse of what they could do when they did it properly. Joss Whedon from Firefly fame was probably the right guy to direct.
Oh,
at
for
that
sure.
time,
Yeah.
At that time.
Well,
but,
I feel like it had so much to live up to, and then it did.
it did.
Like,
Yeah, for sure.
a lot of these you go into expecting some fantastic film, and it's just shit, And I don't know. I just really enjoyed The Avengers. I thought it was a good movie. I thought it came at the right time, maybe in the franchises
Yeah.
to kind of bring it together.
And my hate is retroactive to a certain
Yeah,
degree
a little bit.
because Yeah, it really is, because I'm so high on the praise for the Russo brothers since Winter Soldier, and just the tone shift of the entire MCU from that point on, that the Avengers is almost too comic booky for me,
Yeah.
versus what they brought to the table. And not that everything from that point on isn't based on a comic book, but it makes you forget.
There's
about the
definitely a
comics
tone
little bit.
shift
Yes.
in there. Yeah.
With Winter Soldier, they were like, okay, we did what we needed to in Avengers.
Yeah.
But let's
Yeah.
get into the dark and gritty grown up shit.
In order for this to keep going and to get to where we wanted to go with Infinity War, we have to set the tone. The tone shift has
It's
to
also
happen.
kind of proof of concept a little bit, because
Yeah.
okay, here's all these big
Yeah, they had
names
all
and
the
big
story.
stars that we're going to bring together and put them all in one movie. Is this going to work? Can we do this? And they did.
The feeling that I got as an adult watching the trailer for Avengers, I got a feeling in my gut like I hadn't since I was a little kid watching the first Batman.
Sure.
And you absolutely have to give them that, because I remember seeing all of them on screen together. It's like, it's too much. How do I process this? It's
Yeah.
insane. But yeah, like you said, they killed it. So I have to give it up to that movie. It's on my it's on my honorable mentions.
Nice.
What about you, Sasha?
My favorite movie of the year is the prequel to Alien. It is Prometheus.
Wow.
Oh wow, it's the
That
first
was
time
number
so
one.
far.
It's the first
Yep.
double hit that we got, and no, her number 2. It's the
My
first
number
time
2.
any movies have shared the list. I feel, at least for
Yeah,
this
for
year.
the top three.
The top
Yeah,
3
top
list.
three.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the first symmetry we've gotten at all, and maybe that speaks on 2012's weakness, or maybe it speaks on the strength of 2012, because I went to see Prometheus day one, and I bring a different perspective to this because I had seen the entire Alien series prior. I had digested it. I had seen and studied it meticulously and love every bit of it, even Resurrection up to that point. But this was the first Alien movie since Resurrection. And Resurrection was in 98, 99. There was a large gap of time between Alien movies. And when Prometheus came out, and it was back under the rightful helm of Ridley Scott, my anticipation couldn't have been higher. And the opening panoramic sort of sweep into this alien world that looked a lot like Scotland, because it was, I think. Yeah. But the sweep in and the credits rolling and the slow integration of the letters, Prometheus, just like in Alien, where you see the formation of the A, the L, the I, the E, and the N, it brought back the same tone that I felt watching Alien for the first time, and knowing what I was getting into was an all-time classic. So it immediately brought me back to that. But then it throws in the stuff that I really like that we didn't get to dig into during the Alien franchise preceding it, which is the engineers and the creation of these creatures. And that's what a lot of people didn't like about Prometheus, was that it wasn't a continuation of xenomorphs and Sigourney Weaver and fighting these ridiculous creatures, balls to the wall, action sequence after action sequence. This is an origin story. Idris Elba, fantastic addition to it. I'm just a stan for Idris Elba. I'm going to be. But that aside, Guy Pearce's introduction as Wayland is phenomenal in this movie. Logan Marshall Green does a really surprising job as a supporting character, who arguably is the catalyst for all the bad shit happening. He's the first. Well, he's not the first. No, he's not the first casualty. Those are minor characters, but he is the first memorable casualty.
Yeah, he is.
Yes.
And there's a scene in here that is very disturbing and very intense, and that's the Numi.
Naomi Reprise when she's in the pod?
The self surgery scene, which is very anxiety driven and really awesomely handled in this movie. I wish I had the rebuttals that I have now for the critics of Prometheus back then, because I understand the criticisms back then, but since then we've seen Alien Covenant and yeah, and we've also been able to revisit the entire Alien canon from start to finish, and Prometheus fits perfectly where it was designed to be, which is a prequel to the first Alien. It sets the tone for everything that people love about the Cameron stuff and the original Alien, and it just does a great job. And side note, it's also doubles as an Anunnaki-like origin story. So if you're into any of that stuff, the engineers are essentially the Anunnaki who come from a faraway planet, and they plant the DNA seeds that fertilize the Earth. And what Prometheus takes a look at is what happens when the hybridization of this DNA goes wrong and goes awry and starts infecting humans and in different formats. It's just there's so many tiers of analysis when it comes from the scientific realm to take into account here that I could talk about it for hours, but I won't because I've talked about a lot for hours already. Prometheus is awesome, A+. Fuck the haters.
There you go.
Well, I liked it. You know me, I like to hate on stuff, and I like Prometheus.
I don't remember if I went to see it with someone who had the opposite reaction from me or what it was. I wasn't paying much attention to critic reviews at the time, but there was a large consensus that just did not like that movie because they were expecting an Alien movie, and no, there's no reasoning behind that. The audience expectations, in my opinion, are often unwarranted, and that's only gotten worse as the decade has progressed. Now that we microanalyze everything from posters to trailers to scenes in movies, and I guess I was catching a whiff of that with Prometheus and the microanalysis of every detail and it not fitting in the Alien canon was like, I could, the people who had those sentiments were completely wrong, and I hope that 8 or 9 years later they can revisit it and see what I see in it, which is #1 movie of the year.
All right. All right, so my top movie of the year was Killer Joe. Matthew
Nick
McConaughey.
Cage?
Nope.
No, that's Joe. Okay, sorry. This is
Matthew
Killer Joe's
McConaughey,
serial
good
killer
sir.
movie. Yes.
Oh God! I remember
Neil
that
Hirsch, Thomas Hayden,
Who's fucked
Church. It is a seriously screwed up movie. McConaughey playing kind of the bad guy.
The
So
cringy one.
yeah,
His sister.
yeah. Neil Hirsch plays like a small time drug dealer, and his mom basically steals his stash, and so he comes up with a plan because his mom has a life insurance policy to have his mom knocked off,
Yeah.
and so they hire Matthew McConaughey, who's a Dallas policeman or Dallas detective, to knock off his mom, and he doesn't have the money up front, so he offers up his sister essentially because Matthew McConaughey is into his sister. The very ending scene with the have you seen everybody seen this stuff with me?
I have not
No.
seen this movie. I just know
The end of the movie is extremely disturbing. Like I just think about how did they film this? How long did this have to happen? I maybe I shouldn't ruin it for you guys, but it is extremely uncomfortable through the
Okay.
whole thing. McConaughey is
We love
brilliant actually as this evil detective guy who just wants his money or the girl.
Wow. This is pre-True Detective McConaughey, right?
Yeah,
I
and
wanna-
this is
yeah,
when he's
yeah.
kind of starts to get into more independent
his
films. I
dark
think
vibe.
like
Okay, good.
Mud comes out. I think
well, that's
uh,
here
next
on the honorable
year-
mention. No, Mud came out
was
this
it the
year.
same year?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I think I don't know. I really enjoyed this movie quite a bit, even though it's dark and disturbing. Very uncomfortable to watch at times, but yeah, enjoy that last scene. We should, you guys should watch that
Yeah.
next time. Just talk
tone-
about that damn thing.
Tonally, things got a little more uncomfortable in 2012. Things got a little bit more risque, I guess, as far as intensity is concerned. Just going off of some of the things that we've got on our list here and honorable mentions, because Killer Joe is I remember reading the reviews of it because I was like, "What is this?" And McConaughey was in it, and the reviews of it were like pretty, like you said, uncomfortable to watch. I didn't know it was specifically in the ending. I thought it was throughout the entire movie.
Oh, the whole movie is uncomfortable. I mean, the fact that he is kind of in love with this, almost not. She might be underage. I don't really remember off the top of my head, but if not, she's right there, and just his fascination with her, and she's a little off too.
Directed by
William
Friedkin.
Friedkin.
Holy
yes.
shit! No wonder it's uncomfortable. That's The Exorcist. That's William Friedkin is the French Connection. The Exorcist.
He was still around. That's that guy.
Yeah.
Fuck, that's what he's been doing.
No wonder it's uncomfortable. Jeez. All right.
So, what are your?
Let's end on a high.
Oh yeah, yours.
That brings us to the final number one.
All right. Well, I mean, y'all might shit all over this choice, but I don't
Good.
care.
Can't wait.
My number one was Cloud Atlas.
You won't get a peek from me. I'm okay with that movie.
Well, the only
It's-
thing with that movie
It's a mess.
is
Yes.
it's
It-
very difficult to keep up with. I think.
Yeah.
Listen,
Um,
try to read the book because I tried 3 times to read it. I've picked it up and I've gotten like each time I pick it up, I get through the chapter that I got stuck on, and then I go to the next chapter, and I'm like, fuck. Like I love the movie though.
Yeah, I won't disagree.
I
That was a good movie.
Wanted to like it, but I feel like I'm not smart enough to understand it. Like I could not.
I had to watch it multiple times.
Man, maybe
Well, I
that's
know
it.
I watch it all the damn time.
I think you have to watch it multiple times to get anything from it.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that plays it a disservice as well, and that's why so many people were turned off by it, is because you shouldn't have to do that. You should
Yes.
want to do that. But Cloud Atlas makes it so you have to do that. Otherwise, you leave a 2.5-hour movie not getting too much from it after the first watch.
Yeah, like
Which is what I did.
I mean,
Which is what Heather did.
yeah. It is definitely one of those movies that you have to watch multiple times. Like I've seen it a dozen times at least, and
You look like you want to shit on this one, Miguel.
I was so frustrated by it.
Good. I think we all were, except for Maggie. Did
No.
you like it the first time?
yes,
Okay.
I did, and I wanted to keep watching because again, there's so many things that are happening, and I had to go back and rewatch it. And every time you rewatch it, it's one of those like you find a new thing that was like, okay, got it. But it's like the same, like 6, 7, 8 characters, in different time periods, different characters. They're young, they're old, they're black, they're white, they're aliens, they're hostages. Like they're all different things, and it's so hard to kind of like. I have to go back and look at their names on Internet Movie Database to catch who they are, but of course, in every scene, they're not going to say who they are. But so I haven't pinpointed everybody that's in each scene, or each storyline. But I love the whole theme of it. Like it's reincarnation. It's about destiny and
The string of a soul and how it can go from one individual to another,
Yes.
varying in any, like you said, race, prominence, role in society,
Yeah.
all that. Yeah, that's all the good stuff the movie has going for
Yeah.
it, for sure.
I mean, bad thing. Yeah, it is a little bit of a mess.
Granted, it has to be though, because it's a messy subject at the same
It
time.
is. It's.
Yeah.
I think it's not made. I think it's made to be a little bit ambiguous, and up to your own interpretations. And those are some of my favorite movies to watch. So I think that's why it's my
Nice.
favorite of 2012. But there's a lot of people that feel way different than me about it. So I'll let Miguel, I guess, take it over and argue with me about it.
No, it's just that it was a movie that there's a couple movies I can look back on my whole life and think I really, really wanted to like this movie. And the biggest problem I had with it was, I mean, again, the story is very, very, very interesting and compelling. You have all these souls basically meeting each other in each life, set hundreds of years apart. So that's awesome. The biggest problem a movie like that is going to have is since you can only fit all this in about 2.5 hours.
Congruence.
Right, and you don't get to spend enough time with each section of the story to give it enough of a shit.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest problem I had is like, oh, I'm getting into the story. Wait, now they're throwing us back into the future.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm starting to like this scene. Wait, they're throwing us back into here. They skipped around so much that there was an inevitable emotional detachment that was so frustrating.
And Hollywood still hasn't really figured that out for what it's worth. How do you? I don't know how many pages Cloud Atlas is, but it's probably in the 500 to 600 page plus.
I think
more than that.
yeah, no, it's not more than
It's
that.
not?
It's like 400 or 500 pages.
Okay.
It's maybe about that much, but
Stuff like It, which has warranted a break in the actual movies in Part 1 and Part 2. I feel like Cloud Atlas would have benefited from that,
yeah.
and could have even turned into more of an event.
I think that if it would have been a series, maybe on HBO,
Yeah.
Monster hit.
yeah, it would have been huge. They could have easily broken it down.
But we're at the point in Hollywood still where big names and juicy,
544 pages.
Yeah.
which fits right in line. It's a 2.5-hour movie, which sure you can try and do and condense a 500-page novel into, but it's not. It doesn't treat the source material with as much respect as it could if it was a 2-part movie or a miniseries or something like that. But the Hollywood, the whole system of big names, Wachowskis were attached, big names in the actors, Halle Berry, Tom Hanks,
Hugo Weaving, Jim Sturgis.
You've got so much money going into this that you sort of have to take the shortcomings of the whole package with the benefits of it, which is getting a story out that deserves to be on the big screen, even if it's not as well executed as it could be. And I think you get that perfect hybridization in Cloud Atlas, which is some of the strongest stuff that you could put on the big screen, but done in a slapdash kind of gotta make it a 2.5-hour movie.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the biggest problem I had.
And amazingly enough, it's one of the only books that I have started reading and I have not finished. I go.
You don't have the need to now that you've seen the movie.
Oh
though.
no, I still like
Oh, you
even
want to?
after watching the movie, like I know exactly where I'm at in the movie. It's just the writing is just there's so much.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about A Song of Ice and Fire. I can't get through that.
Yeah, I want to get through Cloud Atlas because I know they obviously they didn't cover everything in the movie, so I want to just like that more nuance that's in there. Which and this is another one like Inception that I love the soundtrack for it. Like I have 3 versions of the same song on my playlist that I listen to.
It's a left
all the
field one
time.
because I don't even remember the soundtrack, but
Oh my
it
god,
must
it's
be pretty
beautiful.
good.
It is amazing. But I hope to finish the book one day. But there's only maybe 3. There's less than 5 books that I've actually picked up, started reading, and I haven't finished. And Cloud Atlas is sadly enough one of them. Even though I love the movie, I want to get through the book. It's just I just really have to just do it. Like I just have to get through it.
I like it. Yeah, I have nothing wrong with that movie, or nothing specifically, because there's a lot I have wrong with it, but I don't see a reason why it shouldn't be on at least an honorable mention list. Yeah, it's good. Speaking of honorable mentions,
Yeah, go on, Miguel.
Argo. I don't think it was the best movie of the year, but I thought it was damn good.
well, the Academy thought it was.
Right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so Miguel, you're kind of letting them
Sometimes
down
when you
there.
go real life, you get the award.
Safe House. I thought it was such an underrated, damn good movie.
It is
It
an
was-
underrated movie.
I loved it because I was sitting there going, yeah, people are going to get to see how Ryan knows how to fucking act. Like Reynolds, for the longest time, we're so used to seeing him as sort of the goofy fuck from like Waiting and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at that time he was like, you know what? After Buried, he's like, you know what, motherfuckers, I'm going to keep
Right,
showing
I
you
can
that
do
I can
this.
act.
Yeah.
And this time I got Denzel supporting me, so it's going to be a lot easier for me to do.
But see, he could have easily been overshadowed by Denzel.
He was.
could have
In
easily.
that movie, I believe he was.
I think there were so many scenes when Denzel was talking to him where he was just kind of just broken. And I was just like, when he was talking about, hey, one of my favorite scenes of the whole movie is when Denzel's telling him, you think she's going to leave you. No, you're going to leave her. When he's talking about his girl, his wife.
Yeah.
And Ryan Reynolds just looks back at him almost crying, just broken and fucked up because of the day he had and saying, yeah, well, you don't know me.
That's true.
There was just so many good scenes in that movie. I was like, God, this acting is better than I think this movie needs it to be. But kudos to both of them, because if you're going to hold your own against Denzel, you better pull something like that out of your ass.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
I think that Ryan Reynolds more than pulled it off. He killed it.
And this I don't want to tout Denzel's chops more than I already have, but that brings that out of you as an actor. Ryan Reynolds may not have been ready for that role, but I guarantee you Denzel helped him prepare for it organically by saying, "Hey, you're going toe to toe with me. I'm fresh off of Training Day now.
That's right.
I
I just won that Oscar, motherfucker.
Yeah, I'm like in an elite class. So if this is the road that you want to go down, well, we're gonna get you there. And this is all within the confines of what many look at it as just an action movie. It's an action movie, but there's a little more to it.
It was incredibly smart. The way it was billed, the way the trailers were, it was ostensibly an action movie, and then you watch it was so much more smarter than that.
Yeah.
And again, it was
Good choice.
Yeah, I loved it. And the other one was my last honorable mention for that year is Chronicle.
I liked that one.
Chronicle
Yeah.
was it was a weird little movie that when I saw the trailer, I was like, this is a little MTV movie. It's it seemed very pop.
Yeah.
It seemed kind of childish, and then I watched them like, this is smarter than I
Breakout
thought it was.
roles for Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah.
And also
That kid.
Dane
Dane
DeHaan.
DeHaan.
That's it.
Yeah.
One of them has gone on to things like Creed and the entire Creed series
Black
and Black
Panther.
Panther. The other has gone on to
Valerian.
Valerian.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah,
So bad.
A Cure for Wellness, Kill Your Darlings.
Oh, yes, that's right. Cure for Wellness is underrated. We'll talk about that later, too.
Yes, we will.
Kill Your Darlings is very underrated, very disturbing movie. Cure for Wellness was also very misunderstood. It wasn't the greatest movie, but it was very misunderstood.
It requires a settling in and sort of an absorption of. It's a long movie. It's 2.5 hours, and that goes sort of unspoken. But that's later on. I
Yeah.
like that movie.
We'll get there.
Yep. Directed by Josh Trank, interestingly enough, who that was probably his audition tape for another underrated movie of the decade, which is Power Rangers. But that's my
Incredible.
So that there's a lot. I was talking about Chronicle the other day with a movie trading company employee because
Of course you were.
of course, this is what I do. I tell my wife that I'm going to get a movie or to rent a movie, which I actually do. But sometimes I'll come home empty-handed because I just go for the conversations as well, and I'll get captured into like an hour-long talk with the movie trading guys. Go figure, right? Like me in an hour-long conversation about movies.
Yeah, can't picture it.
No,
Right,
not at all.
Impossible. But anyways, Chronicle came up the other day because we were talking about Brightburn, which I recently saw, and he mentioned to me. He said Brightburn was like the first like anti-superhero. This is what could happen movies, and I was like, So,
Excuse me.
Chronicle actually does this, but not as direct horror-wise as Brightburn does, because these are teens who are sort of. They're on the right track, but at the same time, they all suffer from like the same issues that any group of 3 teen guy friends goes through, where you've got like a ringleader, you've got the supporting characters of that three-headed sort of friendship that we've all been there as guys, and probably as women too, where you have your role within the friendship in high school and college and all that, and these guys have all that, and Dane DeHaan is the guy who's willing to experiment with what he's been given, these powers and all that, and he's willing to sort of go further than the other 2 are willing to go because he's a little darker, Chronicle's a great movie, man. Glad that showed up because it didn't show up on my list.
Yeah, no, I loved it. He
I
was
almost wrote it down and I didn't.
he's Tetsuo from Akira.
Yeah.
I mean, he really is. He's that one part of the 3-headed friend, or that group of friends that was one of the smaller, neglected.
Yeah.
He was the runt of the litter,
And because of that, he's willing to push the envelope a little bit more. And
he's abused at his home too.
oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That not to be
He's bullied at school.
understated. Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of motivation and reasoning behind why he goes so far. And I know for a fact the Brightburn directors and writers not only studied the Superman canon, but they looked at Chronicle before,
believe
and
that.
because Brightburn is an evolution of Chronicle, even though the main character is a younger version, it's still like the anti-hero. It's right up that alley. So see Chronicle before you see Brightburn, and then you'll see a better movie.
Yeah, it's true.
Facts. What are your honorable mentions? Heather?
Sure. So my first one, we kind of touched on it earlier, but Cabin in the Woods.
Oh yes.
Yeah, we did touch on it earlier.
As in
one of us
last
thought
year?
It was 2011.
I don't know. I just enjoyed it. It had kind of the twisty ending, and
No,
I don't
you're,
know.
you're not
For-
giving it enough credit.
I'm not.
Cabin in the Woods.
It's good. I know.
Cabin in the Woods was a borderline event as far as horror movies are concerned. Not for the reasons why you may think. It's because it exposed every other horror movie prior to it, except for like Sinister and the really good stuff. But it exposed the
Yeah.
screams. It exposed the creature features, and it said, "What if this is what horror movies are like?" And
Right.
it takes you on this like sci-fi trip. Big Brother, overlords of government, just like complete mindfuck of a movie, and to the point where you're just eager to see how it develops. Richard Jenkins, I think we mentioned earlier, he steals the show like within 10 minutes of this movie. And the golf cart scene and the conversation and the way this movie opens up is just like nothing at all to do with what you saw in the trailers and what your idea of the movie was going to be. The first 10 minutes shatter it, and that is a precursor to and foreshadowing of what happens towards the tail end of this, because your expectations are further shattered. So if you're a fan of creature movies, if you're a fan of slashers, if you're a fan of zombie movies, Cabin in the Woods takes all of them, rolls them into a big ball, and says, you're going to be a fan of this movie because we're going to show you why we're better than all of these
Yeah.
movies.
It's also written by Joss Whedon.
I was about to
Joss
say,
Whedon,
that's
directed by
another
Adam
Joss Whedon movie.
Wingard.
No, Drew Goddard.
Oh, Drew Goddard, Adam Wingard. I get those two mixed
Who
up.
he
Pardon
also
me.
I guess he co-wrote it with Joss Whedon.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just it's a great movie. My other ones would be The Hunger Games, which I don't know. It is what it is. I I read
Yep.
before the movies came out, and I liked it. Like I liked how I thought they brought the different districts to life pretty well, like making them different from each other and actually seeing how kind of slummy District 12 is versus when you get to the capital. It's just all these crazy fashions, and I don't know. I just thought they translated it very well from the
Yeah.
books.
I mean, that was one of the better book to TV, or I'm sorry, book to movie adaptations.
Yeah.
For sure.
I'll say this about Hunger Games. It's one of those movies, I was already in my mid to late 20s, and I was very skeptical, and I didn't want to buy into the hype and all that, and I found all the ways to hate on it before I watched it,
Right.
and then I just watched the movie, and I liked it, and I liked Catching Fire, and I liked everything up to Mockingjay, basically, with the movies. I didn't like Mockingjay Part 2, but that's another discussion.
I started working I was working at Hastings whenever Mockingjay came out, and we had a line waiting for us to open whenever Mockingjay came out. And I've never heard of the Hunger Games or anything like that, and of course I'm working in the morning. I open the store, and all these kids are coming in and getting it, and I'm just like, the last books that I can remember that caused lines was Harry Potter.
Mhm.
And I'm like, how do I not know about this
Right.
series? And so, of course, like, after all those kids would come and get the movie, like, I got Hunger Games and I read it. And yeah, so good.
Yeah.
Thank God I didn't read it
My-
before Mockingjay
Right?
came, because I couldn't
I
have
know.
waited.
My sister-in-law had listened to it, on an audiobook, and she recommended it. And I happened to be on a road trip with my mother-in-law for some reason, and she was like, "Well, let's put this on and just try it out." And so we listened to it, and then I had to borrow her iPod because I had to finish it. So yeah, I thought it translated well. And then my last one is Pitch Perfect. Even though that series went downhill so fast, it's my guilty pleasure.
See, I did it. I purposely
I-
did not include it
turn our mics
because
off now,
of the
Morgan?
sequels.
I know. Well, it's
I'm so upset.
they're
What?
so bad,
we,
but the
we can
first
turn
movie,
our mics off now.
you
Yeah,
can,
we
you
can.
can. I'm talking to Maggie. It's fine.
Y'all get at it.
Yeah. So
This is Les Mis
it's
Part
just a
2. Well, no,
fun.
actually,
It's a
Miguel was
fun
in on it.
movie.
Yeah, the first one's great. It is it is comedy gold, and I don't give a shit what y'all
Yeah.
two say over there.
It is. It just
So-
really is.
Pitch
Listen,
Perfect is everything every stereotype of musicals that I have that I don't want to see, I feel are brought to fruition.
But that's kind
in
of the
Pitch
point.
Perfect.
Like the two announcers are just fucking hysterical.
Elizabeth Banks and the
Yes,
other dude.
I
who
know. Yeah, I don't know his name, but they are so.
so good.
Oh my god, they're
so
just
funny. Like,
yeah, I can't even think of a good example of something that they do, but they're so.
I mean, they're shitting,
Basically,
they're shitting
yes.
on all the bands.
Yeah,
they're shitting on all the acapella
undercutting
groups.
each other, and they're taking these little jabs that are just brilliant, and it's just a funny movie. And then there's two more, I think, that don't exist.
Yeah, I hadn't even seen the third one.
I haven't either.
2 and 3 that bad?
2 was awful enough that I didn't see 3, and I love the first one.
Same.
So I'm good.
I mean, I had the soundtrack. My dad watched the movie and called me afterwards. Was
Nice.
like, Maggie, have you seen this movie? It's Pitch Perfect. It's so good. Like, I bought him the soundtrack for Christmas. Like, he
Yes,
loved
yes.
it. Like, that's how much, like, and my dad is like this big old, he's stout dude. Like, he'll,
Looks like a biker.
But
he doesn't.
so-
well, no, but he doesn't look like a.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of
he's
to your
a big
point,
dude.
like yes, it's a musical, I guess, and there's music in it, but it kind of
they're in
makes
acapella group.
fun of
Okay.
itself a little bit,
Yeah.
or movies like it.
Yeah, I can see that, but it still doesn't make it good.
Oh Lord,
That's fine.
I'm right
I
there
like
with
it.
you. I love the first one, hated the second one, so I didn't watch the
Is
third
that
one.
so that's an honorable mention, not a guilty pleasure, or is it like a mix of both?
A little bit of both.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair.
Yep. I'm good.
All right. Yeah, I guess I'll mix in my guilty pleasures and honorable mentions here because I've got a few. Dark Knight Rises is going to be my first honorable mention. I felt that even though it was met with a lot of criticisms for not being as strong as The Dark Knight, which how can you really do that? It was just as good, if not better, and the visceralness and the physicality of that movie was a good complement and a good dynamic and a shift from what Dark Knight was, which was more of a cerebral mind game style of thriller, because the villain in The Dark Knight obviously is a more cerebral villain than Bane, who is a more physical villain, but at the same time, Tom Hardy is such a good actor that he was able to instill a cerebralness to Bane that I had never seen in anything. Any of the comics, any of the... Bane is infamous for his cameo in Batman and Robin, where he's a juiced-up lucha libre wrestler, which he actually is in a lot of the comic lore. Tom Hardy took Bane and took him to the next level, and people were really impressed by what he did with that character. So that alone is enough for me to take it to the next level. There's a scene, there's a collapse of Heinz Field, which I don't know how you can't love that as a anti-Steelers fan for the majority of my life. Seeing seeing Heinz Field implode on cinema was great, and there's just a lot to like about Dark Knight Rises. Moving on, I'll try to go through this quickly. Looper is another honorable mention for me for that year. Rian Johnson's strong foot forward in sci-fi. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who plays a
Yeah.
really interesting character in that movie because he doesn't look anything like himself, even as an actor, and he's not supposed to because he's supposed to look like a young Bruce Willis. Anyway, time travel, lots of cool stuff going on there. Another sleeper, and this is maybe my first comedy movie mentioned, period, in this first 3 years. This is The Watch with Vince Vaughn.
Really?
Vince
Wow.
Vaughn, what's his name?
Ben Stiller.
Ben Stiller, and what's his name from Superbad? Why Jonah Hill?
Jonah Hill?
Okay.
Yeah.
And I love The Watch, and I like The Watch probably for the same reasons I like serious movies, because there's a lot of twists and turns. There's a sci-fi element to it,
Yeah.
and the comedy in it, in my opinion, is right up my alley for what I want in that kind of movie. It is, it's laugh out loud funny when it wants
That's
to
a little
be.
surprising, honestly, that you enjoy that movie.
I love The Watch. Cruising right through the list because 2012 was packed for me. I've got Skyfall, which we've already mentioned here. I think Skyfall is top 3 Bond movies of all time. I'll get to number 2 later on in the series, and that might anger some people but I got a lot of good to say about Spectre, but we'll get to that later. Another sleeper for that year that doesn't get near as much recognition as I think it should is Jack Reacher with Tom Cruise.
I see it.
That movie, from the opening scene, is like a pretty intense 50 cal fucking sniper shooting, ironically in Pittsburgh as well, and ironically in front of PNC Stadium. So that's 2 Pittsburgh sports stadium references in the last 5 minutes, if you're keeping track. But anyways, directed by Edward Zwick, who did some did Glory in the 80s and Last Samurai. So he has this history with Tom Cruise, but then he does this urban gritty thriller, which is based on a book series, of course. And I love that movie. I love the action sequencing and the grittiness of it all. There's a lot of hand-to-hand combat. There's a lot of gunplay. There's supporting actor Robert Duvall, who's really great in that movie. And the last one I'll mention, and this is like the movie that I don't know if anyone at this table has heard of, but you should, and you should definitely check it out. It's called Deadfall. It's with Eric Bana and Olivia Wilde. And it is a heist movie gone awry. It is a casino heist that takes place from the start, and it is a snowy setting, so it's very Reindeer Games casino heist-esque. And Eric Bana and Olivia Wilde are brother and sister.
In what world? I know a Deadfall world.
They're brother and sister, and they've just robbed this casino of money. I want to say it's a casino. It might be wrong, but I feel it's a casino. And there's a terrible car crash, and that kicks off the movie because the car crash ruins their escape plan. And from that moment on, it is a scramble for what do we do now from the thief's perspective with all of this money sitting in the trunk of a car that they just got away with. The authorities are on their ass, and it becomes mystery hybrid, mystery heist and home invasion movie. And it is really surprising, and I'm a sucker for a good Eric Bana movie as well. So that's on the list there too. The last mention, sorry if that was what I said about Deadfall. The last mention, I'd be remiss if I didn't say John Carter, because
I was going to mention it.
Okay, well then
Yeah.
I will just let you
No,
do
go
it.
right ahead, my
because
friend.
John Carter gets so much hate that it's just unwarranted. I think it's almost off of the lack of star power that Taylor Kitsch exudes, because he's never really been the it guy, but he's a good enough actor to carry a movie, in my opinion. And John Carter proved that to me, even though there were some execution issues with it. There's the look of that movie, the creature effects, it's a big budget movie, right? So we're talking about a $200 million plus budget from Disney, so it's supposed to look this good, but there's a lot of heart in it, and there's a lot of he's a character who goes through this transition from like army general, very anti anything that's not American and patriotic and all that, and then he's thrust into this world, which is the world of Mars, with these creatures, and the old American general side of him comes out, but he's also in this future that he doesn't recognize, and he grows closer to the world that he's thrust into. And it just it works for me, and it's a good mix of everything that I like about great Disney movies when they're done right.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't understand why people didn't like it.
Yeah, me neither.
Maybe it goes back to sci-fi still.
Sci-fi
I
and
don't
Disney
know.
never met with like the strongest of receptions, because they don't teeter into that direction as much as they should. And we don't look at Disney as like the go-to for sci-fi live action stuff, but when they do it, it's pretty good, even animated. Like Treasure Planet's one of my favorite animated movies, and that one gets shit on left and right. And I don't know, people have this stereotype of what they want from a Disney movie, and John Carter didn't fit it. And
love the scene when he first gets to Mars and he's starting to learn how to move around
or jump.
Yeah. The whole Mars scene was really cool. I don't know why people didn't like that movie.
A lot of memorable scenes in that one, and I think a lot of it has to do.
Wasn't
with
it supposed to be like the kickoff of a franchise that just didn't go anywhere because everyone hated it? Which I don't understand. I thought it was good.
Yeah,
I haven't seen John Carter.
I did not see John Carter.
Fair enough. It's. I'm not saying you have to watch it or it's 100% worth watching, but it's an interesting part of the Disney canon. It really is.
Yeah.
Because it stands apart from a live action perspective. It's live action sci-fi Disney, and I'm sure there's something else out there that is.
And I always wonder about release dates. Like, I guess when they know a movie's not going to do well, they just release it in February or March.
Back then,
this is a March.
Yeah, this is a March release,
thing.
and back then this should have been a summer release as far as budget is concerned. But I remember there being a controversy with the release dates for this movie, and I want to say it was pushed up from a summer release, and that again is probably due to star power and lack thereof, because there's the main actor is I mean, you know him from movies like Battleship and supporting roles in other lesser known action movies. I like Taylor Kitsch, and I thought he did a good enough job in this movie.
Oh. All right, I got a couple here. I liked Trouble with the Curve, another romantic comedy. Since Clint Eastwood, he's the Amy Adams. He's the old man baseball scout scouting a top prospect for the Atlanta Braves. And I think he's losing it. He can't see or really hear very well, it seems like. Or I guess he hears pretty well. He just can't see. He's having problems getting around. And so one of his friends calls his daughter Amy Adams, and they don't have a real good relationship. To kind of watch him as he's scouting out this top baseball prospect. And it's a good movie. The daughter-father relationship thing's pretty interesting. And then you have... who else is in that? Justin Timberlake plays an ex-baseball player who Clint Eastwood had scouted at one point in time, who, his career was cut short because of injury, and now he's in the scouting business. It's a fun movie. Good little feel-good movie. I like that one.
Yeah, it was good.
And of course, we missed the biggest comedy of the year, Ted.
We didn't miss it. We were just
love
saving
that
it for you
movie.
Mr. Comedy.
The Christmas miracle that keeps on giving.
I really liked the first Ted, and the second one was
The second one's
it's like a
but
made-for-TV movie. But the
first
I really
one,
liked,
lots of fun, very funny. I love that they bring Flash Gordon into the picture.
Himself being a cokehead.
I still haven't seen either one of them.
Oh.
Yeah, you gotta watch the first Ted, man.
You've really got to watch the interview when Ted is having to get a job, and he's having an interview at a supermarket, and he's doing everything he can in answering the questions to not get the job, but the guy gives him the job.
Of
no
course.
one's ever spoke to me this way.
Yeah,
You're hired.
Nice.
I mean,
It's very vulgar. I don't know if you're going to like that, Heather. No.
Oh Lord.
It's
I knew
right
I
in your
shouldn't have said
wheelhouse,
anything.
though. I don't want to shed too much light on your real world scenario, but sometimes we have to hire people that we don't necessarily want in position there, and they do everything to tank the interviews. But anyway.
Yeah, it's called the president currently.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, and he still got the job.
That was a softball for anyone willing to take it, and I'm glad Miguel stepped up to that.
Shit.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, if I'm forced to watch a comedy from that year, I watch The Watch, but Ted is probably close second.
We liked Ted. I like Ted very much. It's Seth MacFarlane who's hit or miss big time. He'll either have you in hysterics or he'll have you
A million ways to die in the West. Give me.
Sometimes he'll hold on to a joke way too long.
Yeah.
Just beat it into the ground.
Cringy. I'm just
Yeah.
no,
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. That's probably
Oh, it's Maggie. Maggie, what's up?
Oh, that was
Yeah,
it?
you've got some. Oh,
Yeah,
you
I'm
started. You kicked
Okay.
us off.
No,
No.
Miguel.
Miguel did.
So we do have to go through your honorable mentions.
Yeah, so
Have to.
We must.
I mean, I think my honorable mention comedy is better than both of y'all's. The Campaign.
No, it's not.
It's not one of Will Ferrell's best, but there are some extremely
There are
funny
moments,
moments. The
yes.
fact that he
Yeah.
sleeps with his wife is
Yeah.
brilliant.
No, well, I love the whole whenever he got pulled over by the cop. God, that shit was so funny. Just the fucking dogs too. Like, oh, I don't know. Zach Galifianakis and Will Ferrell, so damn funny. But yeah, I don't know. I like it better than Ted and The Watch for sure.
Good for you.
Looper is on my list
Yeah,
as
good.
well, but I won't go
You
into
got one
that
right.
since you already shut it. Next one, Promised Land. I don't know if anybody saw that with Matt Damon and John Krasinski.
No.
Really?
Sell me on it
Yeah.
So the
in
movie,
30 seconds or less.
The movie is about Matt Damon is trying to go to this land, and he wants
The
to
promised land.
Well, it's like promised land. He wants basically they want to do fracking, and he goes over there and tells this small town like fracking is so good for you, it's so good for the economy, and he tries to talk them up into selling their land, and so that way they can frack on it, of course. So then John
Sounds
Krasinski
does.
comes in, and basically shits all over his plan. He's an environmentalist, and he's basically just everywhere Matt Damon goes, John Krasinski goes, and what, Morgan?
Well, fracking
Nothing.
actually is a dirty job.
Oh goodness gracious!
Sorry, I just have to flex a little bit of my English grammar muscle there because fracking is dirty.
Oh shit. Anyway.
On Battlestar Galactica, they use frack
Triple
as
entendre.
instead of fuck basically. And so one of the actresses was here for a convention several years ago when fracking was a big deal here, and she's like, I don't understand what's happening. Like everyone's
no.
talking about fracking, and I don't know, it was just kind of funny.
Oh man.
Yeah.
But it's a good movie. It kind of reminds me of like I think if it's trying to be a company, I think it's trying to be Halliburton.
Oh, okay.
All right.
I tell you, the
I don't know.
Enron movie was close to making my list, but that was like last decade, anyways. The decade before this one.
So
I can't remember the name of the company that was doing all the stuff in Arlington and Denton and all
I think
that
it was
stuff.
Halliburton.
I don't know that it was.
Halliburton is big over in
Houston.
They're more
West
oil
Texas,
than natural gas.
But
I'm confusing Enron and Halliburton. Okay, I'll step away from this conversation.
But it's really good, and it has like this twist that I wasn't really expecting. But anyways, it's a good movie. Go check it out. It also has Hal Holbrook in it. So he's
Say that 5 times fast.
No way. Surprised I got it out the first time.
Halliburton, Hal Holbrook.
But he plays a science teacher, and he basically goes up against Matt Damon and says, this is terrible for the land. What are you talking about? So yeah, it's a good movie if you haven't seen it. Matt Damon and John Krasinski wrote it together, and it was directed by Gus Van Sant. So
Good director. This must have kicked off Matt Damon's like environmentalist phase because he also did The Green Zone.
I think the Green Zone that was year before, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Didn't get mentioned.
And
No.
then
Deserving.
yeah,
Snooze fest.
the last movie that honorable mention is Life of Pi. I read the book whenever I was a teenager, and really enjoyed it. I never thought it would be made into a movie, and whenever I found out that Ang Lee was directing it, I was really excited because
He was coming off the Hulk with Eric Bana. How could you not be?
Well, that, which we don't really talk about, but you brought it up, so thanks for that. And but Brokeback Mountain.
Memoirs
too.
of a no, he didn't do Memoirs of a Geisha.
I don't think so, but he's always been a director that I've really liked because even though he did Incredible Hulk,
Oh, he did The Hulk.
the Hulk, yeah.
Nobody remembers who did The Incredible Hulk.
his style. He made that movie even more beautiful than I could have imagined. Which, if you haven't seen Life of Pi, I mean, it's a guy that was on a boat with his mother, and basically the boat, they get caught up in a storm, the boat capsizes.
And then it turns into the Ringling Brothers circus on cinema. Yeah. Life of Pi is okay.
No, it's more than okay.
It is.
It's. Well, I don't want to give anything away, so you can just watch it if you want to.
There's a tiger in it, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
There's
So, it's
mole
on the boat.
rats.
How'd the
There's mole
how'd the
rats
tiger
in it,
get?
too.
How'd the tiger get on
Mole
the boat?
rats are the little things that come out of the ground and poke their heads around.
Prairie dogs.
Yeah, I want to say there's prairie dogs or moles in it too.
Okay.
Did you watch a different movie?
I feel like, what are
hell?
you talking about?
So when he makes it to the island, aren't there just a bunch of other species that sort of become a thing? Am I thinking of the wrong movie?
I think
here?
you might be thinking of a different movie, because whenever he gets to the island,
Different animals come out.
not really.
What a generic
No.
statement.
I don't know. The island is towards the end, so if I say anything, then I don't. I think.
I gotta rewatch Life of Pi. I watched it once, and
Yeah,
I liked it.
I think the tiger's name is Richard Jenkins, but I could be wrong.
That sounds right.
It's like the
Something like that.
actor.
Like the actor,
Oh,
yeah.
jeez.
But anyways, it's a good movie, so Sasha can shit on it all he wants, but and he can be wrong for that.
No,
But-
there's a lot of heartfelt stuff in that movie, and I do like it. I do think it's overrated slightly, but that's okay.
I would agree with that.
Well, y'all are all entitled to an opinion, I guess. All right. Any other movies that you might want to talk about?
Yeah, I'd be remiss. There's one other that I missed in my laundry list of honorable mentions, and I don't want to get any negative feedback from folks for not mentioning it, because I said I would. Mud with
Yeah,
Matthew
McConaughey. Yeah.
Man, really good movie. The director of that movie has
Oh.
gone on to do Midnight Special, Taking Shelter, which he did prior to Mud. But he's got a strong track record of good character-driven stuff. And Matt McConaughey's character in Mud is really good, and I love the relationship he has with the teen kids in there.
Jeff Nichols.
Jeff Nichols is the director. The breakout role for the guy who went on to play in Ready Player One. Don't remember his name.
Ty Sheridan.
Ty
who's-
Sheridan, breakout role for that kid.
Is
Man,
also
that
now in
movie-
X-Men.
That movie is awesome. Love it. And the last thing I'll mention, because I didn't want to give Tom Hardy too much love, is Lawless with Shia LaBeouf and Tom Hardy. This
I
is
was
a
waiting on this.
Jessica Chastain.
Prohibition era movie. What do you have against it?
Nothing.
Okay, good, because it's really good.
The tiger's name was Richard Parker.
Richard
Oh,
Parker.
Richard Parker.
We've just been on
It's
a
Richard
lame
Jenkins
tiger
for so
name.
long.
It is.
Yeah.
It's lame.
Trash
Well,
tiger name.
watch the movie and you'll get it.
So Lawless.
Oh, will I?
Is a
Tigers
gangster
like pepper, but they hate cinnamon, right?
Is that something we should know?
They like cinnamon. They do. There's a tiger refuge in Wiley, and they. I'm serious. I'm serious to God.
And they feed him cinnamon.
No,
well, in
they
The
don't-
Hangover, when
they don't
when,
feed them cinnamon, but they use it
when
for
they're about
enrichment.
to feed the tiger in the bathroom, I'm pretty sure
Stay
Well,
away from
they're
that.
wrong.
that he likes pepper, not cinnamon.
They like cinnamon and coffee grounds and Obsession by Calvin Klein.
Shit, I'm gonna stay away from there.
Lawless is worth seeing if you're into the Prohibition era and not into.
I'm gonna have to
weird
change
tiger
my
facts.
cologne.
Just keep going, Sasha. Keep going.
Just keep us on track.
Lawless, really
Sucks.
strong movie. No, it does not suck. There's not many Prohibition era movies that.
There's too many Prohibition era movies.
Name me another Prohibition era movie. Just try to. Public Enemies is
I was about to say, Public
is a
Enemies-
gangster movie. It's not a that takes
But
place
does
in the
it-
Prohibition era.
Yeah.
Lawless is about Prohibition. And there are a couple of other movies. There's the PBS docuseries from the guy who did the baseball stuff, entitled Prohibition. But I can't think of a better Prohibition era movie than Lawless. And I love that time period, and I love seeing old cars driving around with a lot of illegal alcohol in them. And Tom Hardy's a great actor, and Shia LaBeouf is a great actor, and Jessica Chastain is really good in this movie. That threesome of actors made this movie pop for me, and I remember seeing it and really liking it at the time, and I probably like it even more if I revisit it now. It might have even cracked my list if we're doing like a top 5, but I like Lawless a lot. That is all I have for 2012.
Are you sure?
I mean, that's there.
Last call.
Did you feel the heavy pause? I was waiting.
I
for
stayed
more.
away from Django. That's all I was trying to do.